The vibes are not good. No. Really quickly, I just want to say a huge, huge thank you to Carrie Can Read for her detective map plot breakdowns of Akatar and Crescent City, as well as Mike's Mike, kind of with the Pretty Little Liars videos, and then Newly Nova, who just did a video breaking down the plot of Credence by Penelope Douglas. I just want to say that this book does have a lot of emotional abuse, references to prior abuse in the main character's life, as well as grooming, discussion of physical and sexual assault. I will let you know before I start talking about the physical and sexual assault because it's pretty self-contained to one chunk. So I will give you a warning for that. As far as the other things, it's sprinkled throughout, but it's not as graphic. Also, I genuinely enjoy these books. I really think that they're fun. I'm not here to rant or make fun of them in any like serious or meaningful way. We'll have a little giggle. We'll talk about the plot. What I really wanted to do is I didn't want to reread them. So the most recent book came out in December, which I haven't read yet because I think I've read 4 of them. 3 or 4. There's 3 or 4 of them that I have read. I read them in the fall of 2022. So did I remember them? No, because I've read, I don't know, 600 books since then, and my brain is a sieve. So, and fantasy isn't really something that you can be like, oh, waiting for the next one to come out in the series. You kind of have to go back and, or at least I do. I have a really hard time remembering. So I just wanted to make it to where I had something to look at that I didn't have to reread them when the final one comes out in like June of 2024 maybe. Anyways, so I'm hoping to have these done before then. I've redone all of my annotations for this book. I have a 23-page script. So I really hope that you enjoy this video. I am going to continue with the series. I have a couple more ideas for things that I want to do as far as this like longer form content, which I think that I prefer making because I have ADHD and I find it really hard to switch between tasks. So, kind of putting every bit of my life force into one thing is what I'm good at. So, here are my annotations for the book. I really hope that you enjoy this. And yeah, I'm gonna fix my board because I took some stuff off of it after I filmed it the last time. And then I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna drink yogurt, my Chobani yogurt drink, and then we're gonna do this. Okay. Oh my god. Ow. This book has some triggering content, which I mentioned in my introduction, so I figured that I would just actually go ahead and read you the content warning that is in the actual book. I really appreciate when authors put content warnings in their books, and I've noticed that that happens a lot with books that are originally on KU or like self-published, so good job, KU authors. The Myth of King Midas Reimagined. This compelling and dark adult fantasy series is as addictive as it is unexpected. With romance, fae, and intrigue, the gilded world of Aurea will grip you from the very first page. Be immersed in this journey of greed, love, and finding inner strength. Please note, this series will contain explicit content and dark elements that may be triggering to some. It will include explicit romance, mature language, violence, non-consensual sex, and emotional manipulation. It is not intended for anyone under 18 years of age. This is book 1 in a series. So this is what the book looks like. I bought it on Amazon. Sorry. So the back of the book, the blurb is gold. Gold floors, gold walls, gold furniture, gold clothes. In King Midas's castle built at the top of the frozen mountains, everything is made of gold, even me. In Fair Verona, where we set our scene, just kidding, we're in High Bell. Sixth Kingdom, we'll get to that in a minute. Sixth Kingdom, High Bell is either the town or the castle. Don't know. I've read this book now 4 times, and I couldn't tell. We open our book with the main character watching an orgy. Buckle up, babies. Okay. Our main character and our main POV is Aaron. Really quickly, I would just like to say that this image, which I will put on the screen because also my glittery scrapbook paper that I got at Michael's. Thank you. Here's some commotion for the glitter paper. Yes. So I made Aaron on Sims because Aaron is famously gold. Her skin is gold. More on that in a minute. A few things about Arin. She has had a rough one, okay? And by one, I mean life. So she's pretty optimistic and empathetic, and she is a girl's girl. Yeah, she's a girl's girl. Her description of herself: when people look at me, it's not to appreciate the curve of my shape or to decipher the thoughts in my eyes. No, they're only preoccupied with one thing, and that's the luster of my skin, because it's gold. Not golden, not tan, not painted or dipped or dyed. My skin is real, shimmering, satiny, gilded gold. She's watching King Midas with his concubines, and they're having an orgy, as one does. In this book, in this world, the king's concubines are referred to as royal saddles, so there's that. Saddles are often mentioned, but the only ones in my recap, they're just mentioned as a group for the most part. The only ones that I mention in my recap for this book are Rissa, Polly, and Mist. So Rissa and Polly, they're hot blondes. Mist has dark hair, and she is very mean. She has her reasons, but Mrs. Little Miss internalized misogyny. Okay, so back to the orgy. Is she participating? No, she just gotta sit there. She's watching this display of debauchery, and we get a bit of her stream of consciousness rambles. We are very much in Arin's internal world. It does make it a very quick read, because it's literally just her stream of consciousness. But when you when you aren't reading it and you're taking a step back and trying to I don't know, write a 23-page script, and you're trying to describe what Arin is thinking, it's a little bit hard for me, at least. So I had a hard time, and I think I did okay. Bear with me. And she says, thanks, in her head. Despite the fact that I'm being forced to watch and listen to the lewd acts right now, and despite the fact that the top of the dome's usually blocked with snow, I still like coming in here. It's the closest I ever get to being outside or feeling the wind on my face or having my lungs expand with fresh air. Bright side, at least I never have to worry about my skin getting chapped from the wind or shivering from the snow. The snowstorm does look cold after all. I try to keep a positive outlook on life even if I'm in my own person-sized birdcage. A pretty jail for a pretty relic. By the way, she's referring to the atrium of the castle. So, if you have questions about what she means about her person-sized birdcage, she's in a cage. So she's in a cage. We'll get some more info on the logistics of said cage in a minute, the architecture. The noises of the aforementioned orgy pull Arin from her thoughts. We get a bit of an info dump here. So there are currently 6 saddles servicing His Majesty. 6 is his lucky number. That comes up a lot. I don't think it's in my thing a lot, but just know that he loves the number 6. Sexy 6. And he's the ruler of the 6th kingdom of Auria. So at the minute, there are 5 women and 1 man catering to his carnal needs. I printed the map of Auria, but all you'll need to know for this recap are 4th kingdom, 5th kingdom, and 6th kingdom. More on that in a second. And Arin is also a saddle. She is the king's favored saddle. We'll get some more info on what that means in a second, but it's basically what it sounds like. All of these hot girls are crusty king's mistresses. Simple enough. They presumably finish. Well, I guess at least presumably he finishes. The other one's probably not. So Midas dismisses his harem to their quarters. They stay in the saddle's quarters together. As I mentioned, Arin literally, she lives in a birdcage and she's all by herself, all on her lonesome. So she's kept separate from them and she's kept alone. She's not allowed to go anywhere outside of her cage or away from the presence of the king. Not like at the same time. She's not always with him, but if she's not with him, she's in the cage. So he sticks around to yap with our girl. Okay? Little kiki. Post-nut kiki. He tells her that she looks good enough to eat tonight. And she says, you could let me out of this cage and have a taste. I'm careful to keep my tone playful and my expression sultry, and my gut burns with want. Let me out. Touch me. Want me. My king is a complicated man. I know he cares for me, but lately I've just been wanting more. I know that's my fault. I shouldn't want more. I should be happy with what I have, but I can't help it. That face I just made is going to be a recurring theme. This book, I mentioned that this book was hard for me to summarize in some parts because we get so much internal monologue, but I do just want to tell you that Arin's thoughts about Midas really read like your friend defending her shitty boyfriend. Every 5 seconds, she'd spend time with me. He's always like So ungrateful. Like, I know that he's busy and he's done so much for me. He took out the trash once. And that's kind of like what she's feeling guilty about. So, does acknowledge that it sucks to be in that fuck ass cage, but like, she rationalizes it. She's like, well, he wants the best for me. And spoiler, he doesn't. Honestly, like, painful how much this book makes you want to scream, like, girl, get up. Midas touches Arin through the bars of her cage, asking if she enjoyed watching. And she says, tee hee hee. Well, I would enjoy participating more. Which, like, fair. He responds that she's far too precious to be piled in with his other saddles. Remember that bit from earlier about her being his favorite saddle? Well, she's special because the rumor is that he gold touched her. So, like, he's King Midas. He can touch things, they turn to gold. And the rumor around the kingdoms is that he gold touched her. And that's why she's his fave. Or, like, she was his fave, and then he gold touched her because she was his favorite. Not clear. Not clear on the rumors. Not really a good representative of the rumor mill of Oria, a fictional world that may or may not be flat, but we'll get to that. He says, and I quote, "You're not like one of the common saddles to be ridden daily, Arin. You're worth far more than that. Besides, I like you always there watching me. It makes me hard." I hate this man. And Arin thinks in her head that it's funny how he can make her feel immense desire and crushing disappointment at the same time. And isn't that just what you want from a lover? Immense desire and crushing disappointment. That's kind of what we're all striving for, I think, really, if you think about it. She expresses some desire to have more interaction with the other saddles because she's kept separate from them. They live in the saddles' quarters together. She's kept separate, and they resent her because it seems to them that she gets special treatment, which she does. We'll come to find out we're kind of in like a princess and the pauper situation. You know, like, the one thing that Arin wants is friendship, love, affection, and what do you give the girl who has everything? Which, like, not really, but whatever. We will see throughout the book that Arin is, like, maybe the most understanding person ever, because she knows the saddles resent her, and she's like, TBH, can't blame them. I would resent me too. It's not all sunshine and rainbows for me, but, like, I get it. Makes sense. He gets pissy. And we're getting the vibe, like, maybe this guy's kind of an asshole, and Arin has, like, yet to realize that. Like, imagine you're meeting your friend's boyfriend, and she's like, so what did you think? And you're like, wow, does he always talk to you like that? Like, ugh. She's like, oh yeah, like, he's just, like, very particular. You are my royal saddle, my favored, my precious, he lectures, making my eyes drop down to the edges of my toes. I don't give a forged fuck what the servants and saddles say. You are mine to do with as I wish, and if I wish to keep you in your caged quarters where only I can get to you, then that is my right. I shake my head at myself. Stupid, stupid. You're right. I just thought, you're not here to have thoughts, Midas snaps. Yeah. Remember that TW about emotional abuse? Well, this guy, he's got a master's degree in gaslighting. So he turns the situation around on Arin. He's, like, making her feel ungrateful for asking him for, like, literally anything. And in this case, it's like, hey, let me join the fuck fest. Okay. I'm gonna rip this into shreds. So, gaslight, gatekeep, girl king, I guess. Arin has been adequately guilt-tripped, thinking, like, he's so right. Silly Arin. Where would she be if he hadn't rescued her? She could be owned by horrible people, and that was her existence before. So, like, a little bit of, she was a victim of child trafficking. I don't look for more information, but so she ends up apologizing to him. Yeah. Noticing that Arin is appropriately admonished, Midas rewards her with the only thing she desires in the whole wide world, just a little bit of human contact, a little bit of affection. Midas says, that's my precious girl. And Arin thinks, the worry knotted up in my gut loosens a bit, because I am precious to him, and I always will be. He and I, we have a bond no one else understands. No one else can. I knew him before he wore the crown. I knew him before people bowed to him in reverence. Before this castle gleamed with gold. 10 years I'd been with him, and that decade knotted the string between us. Have the invisible string. Do that. I'm going to say this a lot, but it's really giving your friend who's so hot and nice explaining, like, why it's actually okay that her boyfriend is a Republican and he's actually a really good person, actually. So he tells her to go to her chambers and he'll call on her in the morning. She's disappointed because she wanted what? Say it with me, affection. She's all alone in her cage talking to a gilded bird she named Coin, having a normal one. And quickly we see that anytime Arin has an anti-cage thought, she's been conditioned by King Crust to talk herself out of it. Okay? Turning, I run my hand on the bars before letting my arm drop to my side. Bright side, Arin. You have to look on the bright side. Like the fact that my cage isn't small. Midas has slowly expanded it over the years to reach throughout the entire top floor of the palace. He had workers construct extra doorways at the backs of rooms to be fitted with barred walkways that spill out into large circular cages. He did all of that for me. On my own, I can get to the atrium, drawing room, library, and royal breakfast room, plus my personal rooms, which takes up the entire fourth ring. It's more space than a lot of people have in the kingdom. Quick note, when he tells her that he'll call for her in the morning, she finds it weird because he doesn't usually call upon her until after the sun sets. With your head. But he tells her that the ruler of Fifth Kingdom, King Folk, is leaving tomorrow, and like he's a bit obsessed with Arin, so Midas is kind of essentially using her to flex, like, look at my hot girlfriend, you crusty old flop. Actually, I'm gonna put Folk on the bold. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh. I know where it is. No, I'm not refilming that. Sorry. Spoiler, I don't care. I'm not refilming it. Sorry. He was hiding. So the next morning, Arin is awoken by a loud bell. The bell is also made of gold, if you were wondering. I know you were. And she's hungover. I didn't mention it, but our girl likes wine. She's pretty bored. She doesn't really have a lot to do, aside from, like, looking pretty and not even, like, she's literally just, like, a toy on the shelf. Here we are introduced to her usual guard, Digby. Digby is an older man, and he's been Arin's guard for years. He's the guard she's had the longest. Arin wants a friend so bad, so she's excited because there's a new guard next to Digby. That guard rotates, but Digby, like, he's very steady. He's been her guard for many, many years. Everyone else gets, find out where they go. And Arin's really excited because he's younger, he's closer to her age, and Arin wants a friend so bad. She wants a friend so bad. She wants to go to Claire's. She wants to get friendship necklaces, and she wants to swap them with her bestie. She wants a best friend. She wants a friend. Unfortunately, the new guy, his name is Jock. He's not pictured here because he's an asshole and a flop. So, as Arin is getting dressed, we are treated to the knowledge that all of her dresses are backless. Hey, Abby, why is that relevant? Oh, because they're backless because of her ribbons. Pardon? What's up? Calls them ribbons, for lack of a better term. But she has 24 gold ribbons that sprout on either side of her spine, from the back of her neck to her tailbone. They are also long, so they drape to the floor like a train on a gown. And she usually ties them, like, in her hair or, like, as an accessory, which is, I don't love the ribbons because they creep me out, but someone with ADHD, having a built-in accessory would kind of be, like, pretty good for me. Don't. Please don't. So they will be described throughout the book as silky, the ribbons. I think that's where I was. Sorry for the interruption. But I can't picture anything but, like, horrifying skin ribbons. I have a really hard time, like, picturing things that aren't real, like, things that I haven't seen before. So, it's, like, the most body horror, like, nasty image that my brain conjures every single time I read about it. We find out that she grew the ribbons right before Midas saved her, which was when she was with 15. More on that in a bit. And it hurt when they were growing in. So, the ribbons are the worst part for me personally, but it gets worse because the ribbons are not only just, like, hanging from her back, but they are also prehensile, which means she can move them. Like 24 teeny tiny limbs made of off-ray ribbon. And they're stronger than they look, and they braid her hair. Arin sets off to the breakfast room where Midas has summoned her. She has her own caged-in passageway to get there. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an info dump about the world. We get little chunks every now and again, and I've mentioned this, but the world is called Auria. Auria is divided into 6 kingdoms. Midas rules 6th kingdom, King Folk, who is pictured here by this clip art. It rules 5th Kingdom. And King Ravager, aka King Rot, who we will get to, and is not pictured. I forgot to print a picture. I forgot to print a clip art photo. So, you're just gonna have to live with that. He rules 4th Kingdom. He has a very Taylor Swift big reputation about him. We'll get to that. We get more info on the other kingdoms in other books. We don't really talk about them. Don't worry. Also, 5th and 6th Kingdom are really cold, but 6th Kingdom, where we are, is constantly blizzarding. He describes King Fulk, saying, I have no idea if Fulk used to be a handsome man when he was younger. All I see now is creased skin and an overplumped body. But the yellowing of his teeth from too much pipe smoking is what makes me cringe. That and the leer in his dark eyes every time he glances at me. It's a tie between the two, really. Rissa and Polly are sitting on his lap, and peace, where they go. And they're, like, irritated with Auron. I mentioned they don't like her. And she says, to them, I suppose I'm just competition. Everyone knows what happens to royal saddles who become obsolete. They get tossed aside for newer, firmer, prettier saddles. Although, I'm convinced that if they actually spent any length of time with me, they'd really enjoy me. I'm ridiculously fun. You kind of have to be when the only person you hang out with is you. I wouldn't want to bore myself. And she's so real for that. She's but a girl, you know? In the breakfast room, Midas is sitting with King Fulk, who has Rissa and Polly on his lap, and he's visiting from 5th Kingdom. I mentioned Fulk is a little bit obsessed with our girl, Auron, but Midas is, like, extremely possessive of her, doesn't want anyone to touch her. And possessive is a great term, considering he sees her as, like, an actual object, just for real, full stop object. King Fulk calls Auron Midas's gold-touched whore. Yes, and she has a seat to play the harp. And Fulk remarks how beautiful she is, and Midas responds, of course she is, she's mine. Fulk says he'd certainly pay handsomely for a night with her, and Auron's disgusted, and immediately thinks Midas is going to smite this man. Put his head on a spike, mount it on the gates, and gild it. Just for daring to say such a thing. Because once a financial advisor had said something similar, and that's what Midas did. Midas had all of his fingers and toes chopped off, just normal behavior, you know. However, Midas does not smite him. In fact, it seems like he's considering it. After consideration, Midas says he clearly isn't wanting for money, what with all the gold. And he says, one night with Auron, and Fulk will give Midas use of his army for an attack against 4th Kingdom. Now, here's what you need to know about 4th Kingdom. They have an extremely strong military. Like, I was going to compare it to, like, a country, but I don't actually know what country has, like, its own military, or has the best military. I don't know. But, like, they have, like, the best military. You don't fuck with 4th Kingdom. You don't start a land war in Asia. You don't fuck with 4th Kingdom. That kind of thing. Midas wants to use Fulk's army to attack 4th Kingdom's borders. They argue back and forth, and Auron's, like, sitting there. She's just sitting there, playing that fucking harp, and she goes, absolutely not. And they ignore her. Because, well, she's an object. And they come to an agreement. It is so bad for her. She's devastated, and she calls him by his first name. She's like, Tyndall, please. His name's Tyndall. Which makes sense because it's a hideous name, and he's a terrible man, despite the fact that she tells us that he's handsome. I don't believe it. And he tells her to remember her place, and says that she's his royal saddle to be ridden by whomever he wishes. She's, like, crying and begging him to reconsider, and he tells her to get back to playing the harp. Now sit pretty on your stool and play your silly music. Leave the men to speak, Auron. Woof. I would commit arson, and also we find out that he, quote-unquote, saved her when she was 15. So, do with that information what you will. We'll discuss it some more later. The next chapter, we're at chapter 5, BT Dub, page 48. This is not a really long book, we'll also say. For a romantasy, not too long. It's been about a week, and Auron has taken Midas's command to, like, sit pretty and leave the men to speak too hard. Maybe Midas didn't expect me to take his advice so thoroughly. He'd said it to put me in my place, but all week I've sat and I've played while the men have talked. They've talked, but I've listened, watched, pieced together their plans against 4th. It's almost funny how much people will say in front of a woman they only view as possession. Slay. So they're planning on taking back some land that 4th has been edging into, and this land includes mines. So Auron did some library recon to find out this information, but she couldn't figure out exactly what's in the mines because her cage, she can only reach so far outside of the bars of her cage in the library. So Arya notices that our girl Rissa has been dancing for men's entertainment for a while, 3 hours or so to be exact. So every now and again she winces like she's sore, and Arya's like, psst, hey, pretend you fainted and like go rest. Like you're about to fall over. And as I mentioned, the other saddles don't fuck with Arryn. So she tells her not to talk to her. And Arryn persists trying to help, she's thinking, she's weary of dancing, and I'm weary of always being looked at like a hated rival. I want to help, and I'm going to, with or without her permission. So she comes up with a bright idea that she's gonna throw a book at Rissa, and she aims for her boobs because she figures like that's not gonna hurt, but like she might need to she'd go lay down for that. But it hits her in the face because her aim is bad. It hits her right in the nose. Her nose starts bleeding. She does get to go lay down, so like shoddy execution, but desired result, you know? And this is what I mean when I said that Arryn was a girl's girl. Stuff like this, it's just like, yeah. Midas is a little bitch and tells Arryn that since she whacked Rissa, thinking that like Arryn did it because she's jealous, that Arryn can take over dancing for King Folk. He's saying like just the most vile shit you can think of to Arryn, and she's like, Arryn thinks like at one point that he has maybe said something vile enough for Midas to like come to his senses and be like, what the fuck am I doing? But Arryn's on the verge of tears, and she thinks that at least things can't get any worse. You don't want to say that. Rule number 1, you never say things can't get any worse, because they can certainly get worse. Especially when you're a girl who lives in a birdcage. It seems like things can only get worse for you. I digress. As the doors to the library opens, and in walks and opens up to reveal a beautiful white-haired woman with high cheekbones and a golden crown. Queen Melina. When will my girl know peace, you know? Melina is pictured on my poster board as the White Witch from the Chronicles of Narnia. And Arryn tells us that the queen fucking hates her. So we get some exposition telling us that the king and queen have been married for nearly 10 years. Just in the back of your mind, how long has Arryn been with him? About 10 years, so just keep that. And it is not a love match. He resents her because she hasn't given him an heir. She resents him because she should have had the crown passed down to her by birthright, but she's magicless. She had to take a husband with magic, or her only option would have been to step aside. Some random take the crown, some distant cousin or something. I haven't mentioned this, but every ruler of each kingdom has to have magic. It's just a job requirement. So, Fulk's magic power is that he can duplicate things, not people. And King Ravager, who I mentioned earlier, his special power is that he rots things. That's it. Yeah, really creative name. Don't you think? The people of Highbell, Sixth Kingdom, have sympathy for Melina. They pitied her when no power manifested. Now they also pity her for having a barren womb. Moral of the story is these two hate each other's guts. So, and Melina also hates Arryn. It's kind of like, she's pretty spiteful. Like I get it, but like, and she asks Midas for a word, and they leave the room. So Arryn takes this opportunity to scurry on out because no way is she hanging out alone in a room with folk and like other saddles. So, but she went the wrong way in her hurry, and she finds herself in the atrium. Adrian from the orgy of chapter 1. However, I'm just gonna go lie down on some pillows, like, while we wait. First is open, and in walks the happy couple. Arryn's like, fuck. So she hides behind a plant, as you do. And Melina is pissed that Midas launched an attack without talking to her first, because he's like, this is a breach of treaties that have been in place for like thousands of years, okay? So, and he's like, well, I don't have to ask you for anything, because I don't know if you remember, but you don't have magic. And she's like, ugh. He's just like so mean. He's like, well, you know, your bum-ass kingdom was broke before me, so, like, think about that. I need you to know that he is Gaslight, and if he's Gaslight, she's girl boss, okay? And I mean that in the most negative sense of the word. If Midas is fiscally conservative boyfriend vibes, Melina is white-collar, boss babe, Sheryl Sandberg vibes. Like, and she's not letting him twist shit around. They argue back and forth until he calls her Baron, and she rears back as if someone has slapped her, which, like, fair, that's crazy. He said, like, the way he says it's like a slur, it's crazy. And he says that the conversation is a waste of time, because of course he does. As he's walking away, she says, I know the truth, Tyndall. And he turns around. What truth is that? Don't worry about it. You don't find out today. Don't worry about it. Remember that she thinks she knows something. So Midas says he'd be very, very careful if he were her. Arn thinks a threat, plain and simple. He dismisses the queen and they leave, and Arn breathes a sigh of relief. And as soon as the coast is clear, she fucking books it to her room. Her cage, her like bedroom in the cage, her caged-in bedroom. In Arn's room, it's getting dark. She goes to grab a candlestick when someone grabs her by the wrist through the bars of her cage, as someone else comes up behind her and grabs her by the hair. So the wrist grabber releases the hold, but the hair grabber is still grabbing. So he's like holding her by her hair. Is it? It's the queen. She saw Arn in the atrium when she like was unintentionally eavesdropping, and she's got words. Melina eyes me dispassionately. The king's favored, she spits. Like it's the most hated word in her... Okay. Like it's the most hated word in her entire vocabulary. It probably is. It always bothered me all these years why he chose to gold touch a useless orphan girl to keep her like a trophy on a shelf, she says, looking around my cage with disdain. But Midas always did have his obsessions. I'm not an obsession. He loves me. She just doesn't want to admit it. She's thinking this. As if she can see the defiance in my face, she laughs. You think you have his heart? She asks, her tone a mix of mock pity as she leans down so that we're eye to eye. Oh dear, you're nothing but a dog he keeps kenneled, a prize that he likes to show off to make himself seem more interesting. It's a lie, I know this, but I'm not thick-skinned enough to face her spewing words of hate and jealousy and not be affected. Declaration, along with the pounding sharp pain at my scalp, makes even more tears build in my eyes until one dives onto my cheek. Arn's crying, and Melina starts monologuing. I was a foolish girl then, a powerless royal with no way to rule on my own when Tyndall showed up. My father said Midas was a gift from the gods, a handsome vigilante with a romantic marriage proposal on his tongue and gold in his hands. It's no wonder I happily went along with the proposal. He did seem serendipitous, exactly the savior we needed. I didn't even care that he kept you. My mind whirls as I try to kick past the pain to focus on her words. I inwardly kick myself for getting caught, for not even being mindful enough of my surroundings to know that she was in here, waiting to pounce. All men have their vices, after all, Melina tells me, her tone making it clear what she thinks of me. Tyndall's was making you into an heirloom, a caged orphan girl with gold-stained skin so that he could show off and keep to himself. It's garish and gaudy, but you're of no consequence to me then, and you're of no consequence to me now. Do you know why? Why? I ask, when it's clear she wants me to. Melina's eyes gleam. Because you're in there, and I'm out here. It's a little bit sick and twisted. Like, that's a little bit diabolical. A simple statement, but one that bites into my heart with the vicious, snapping teeth of a beast. Whatever she sees in my expression makes her smirk in victory. Her eyes move up to look at whoever's holding me. You can release her. Drop Arn to the henchman. But as she leaves, she makes sure Arn knows that if she catches her eavesdropping again, she will cut off her pretty little golden ears. So, that's fun. Next chapter, next day. Arn wakes up just dreading the day. Like, she knows her time is up and she's gonna have to deal with King Fulk and the intermittent agreement that these two flops made. Midas has had a gown hung in her cage and she's to wear it today. This gown is something. Gold and gauzy, so sheer that it's barely a gown at all. My teeth pressed together as I look at it, my spine gone rigid. Midas had this dress pulled out for me. A message, plain and simple. Tonight, I'm to be dressed as a saddle. Tonight, he's going to let me out of my cage. Arn keeps repeating the things that the queen said in her head, like, over and over. And you can tell that she kind of, like, knows to some extent that it's true. And she doesn't want to believe it. She doesn't have to be so fucking cruel about it. Jesus. Where's the grace? Where's the decorum? She's so nervous, and she's just dreading this, like, more and more by the minute. Dress, like, really is just, like, salt in the wound, though. Midas comes in and spooks her while she's fixing her hair, and why is he there? Why else? To gaslight. That's what he does best. He has a master's degree in gaslighting. HD, even. So he tells Arn that he knows she's angry with him. No shit. And he's correct, but he's obviously just there to manipulate her into doing his bidding. But he does seem stressed, and Arn is just too nice for her own good, and she's like, you good? Like, are you okay? And he goes mega asshole mode, and he tells her he just needs her to behave tonight. She's just flabbergasted that the situation is happening, like, in the first place. And Midas just tells her to trust him. Let's trust him, right? He wants me to behave. He wants me to trust him. And hasn't he earned my trust after all these years? Hasn't he? The answer should be a resounding yes. The answer should be easy. The problem is, it isn't. Yeah. Time passes. Arn has been trying to distract herself in her cage because she's just waiting. Like I said, she's bored a lot. She's, like, always in this cage. She's got, like, a lot of hobbies, but, I mean, she's bored. and lonely. We get a big stream of consciousness, like a bunch of stream of consciousness. Describes her fit. She has used the ribbons to cover up her bits because the dress is completely see-through. She's smart. She's a woman in STEM, engineering specifically. But she heads down to her doom, and she gives us a backstory of the first time that she walked through Highbell Castle 10 years ago. So, Arin is 25, by the way. I am also a woman in STEM. Math. 15 plus 10 is 25. And I'm also 25, so brag. Walking into a palace after the places I'd been, surreal. It had been surreal. I was 15 years old, but a girl in only one sense of the word. My innocence was lost. That's how some people would put it, but not me. I never misplaced my innocence. It wasn't my own doing from a forgetful lack of care. It was taken from me. One cruel exploit at a time. I remember each piece of it as it broke away from me, until I was raw and bare, exposed to the harsh elements of the world, with a chip gouged deep in my shoulder, and a bitter taste always at the back of my tongue. No. I wasn't innocent anymore when I walked into Highbell with Midas for the first time, but he brought back something I thought I'd never have again: trust. He wasn't a king yet then, and the castle wasn't made of gold. And despite the opulence of my surroundings, when I first came here, I was gloomy too, because I knew that our short few months alone together were coming to an end. So they were like alone together for a few months. This is a flashback within this flashback. So Midas is telling her that he's going to offer his hand in marriage to the Princess of Six Kingdom, which is Melina. He'd startled me with his words. There was no mention of any of this before. He had plans and ideas, I knew he did, but I wasn't interested in hearing them. I was too enraptured with soaking in the peaceful reprieve, the safety, the friendship, but I always knew the other shoe was going to drop. I looked up at Midas, my handsome nomad with snowflakes in his blonde hair. Blonde man. We were camped beside a frozen fissure. Icicles formed around its mouth like a geode, diamonds for teeth that glittered beneath a waning moon. Why? If you heard the heartbreak in my voice, he didn't say so, but his brown eyes softened as he looked over at me, the campfire crackling between us like tension. The kingdom is broke. I scrunched up my nose. How can a kingdom be broke? Midas smiled over at me, swiping grease-stained fingers down his pants as he tossed the last of the bones from our meal that he'd caught. Kingdoms can go broke quite easily, actually, but in this instance, Highbell has struggled for years. They are little more than a frozen wasteland at the tip of the world. No farming to speak of, no mining lucrative enough to sustain them. They're crumbling without the proper allied ties and trade. It's a wonder the other monarchs haven't struck already. I curled my toes inside my fur-lined boots, trying to leap from his words to his intentions. He had the advantage of age over me, being 7 years older, but I wasn't naive. What about me? I asked him. I wasn't sure how I was able to talk with the lump in my throat. Midas came in front of me. You stay with me. I made a promise, didn't I? He asked, and my relief was instant and warm, almost enough to ward away the chill of the night. With you by my side, we'll save Sixth Kingdom from ruin. I smiled up at him, appreciating his smooth face that he insisted on shaving every morning, despite the fact that we were weary travelers, oftentimes with no one to look upon but each other. He was meticulous about himself, just as he was about everything else. He didn't have to spell it all out to me, but he did anyway. He trusted me with his vulnerabilities, his hopes, his dreams. A man with no important bloodline, with no family, no land. He wanted to save a kingdom, to bring back glory to a place that was dying in a frozen tomb. We talked long into the night as he laid everything out, all his plans, his intentions, my role in his life. I was in awe of him. Midas pulled me up to my feet, his hands warm, steady. I'll put you in a palace, Orin. You'll be safe, with me. But you'll marry her. He petted my cheek with the edge of his thumb, and I leaned into the touch. The first man I'd ever done that with. It felt like petals opening to soak up the sun. Yes, if all goes well, she'll have my name, but you have my love, precious. And what's a ring when you have a heart? He made love to me there, over a puff of snow that somehow felt like clouds, beneath a thick tent made of leather that brined the salt of our sweat. He held me until the last of the stars winked out. She was 15, he was 22. I'll let you do that moral math on your own. This man is a crusty man. He's a predator. Piece of shit. Digby's with her, and he tells her she can go in, and she's like, yeah, I know, I just really don't want to right now. Like, I think we're, like, they're standing outside of a ballroom or something. But there's music being played and, like, various acts of debauchery taking place in the corners when Arin walks in. Midas does a toast to the strength of the kingdom and to King Folk because the attack that they planned on Fourth Kingdom was successful. So he states to the entire room that he has let Folk borrow Orin, a person, And he tells Arin to come forward. Everyone in the room looks at this poor girl. So she realizes that not only is Midas giving her to Folk, he's also like making a spectacle of it. Salt me wound. As Arin walks up to the dais where Midas and Folk are sitting on thrones, she can hear whispered chatter. The way they look at me, I can tell that I'm not a woman to them. I'm a trinket that the king usually keeps hidden away. Everyone wants to take advantage of this rare sighting like I'm a nearly extinct animal. Midas is annoyed that she covered her bits with the ribbons. And he's like, and reminds her to behave and tells her to go sit with Folk because they've got a debt to pay. And she feels like a walking coin, which is saying a lot because she's gold. To give herself a little pep talk, and like she's going through like every single motivational affirmation that she can think of in her little head, and nothing's working. She really doesn't want to do this, but King's Crust have like stolen her agency, and I hate them so much. Arin muddles through sitting with King Folk. He makes her like feed him, and he's like truly foul, and he's leering, and he's being so nasty towards her, makes her kiss him. And Arin's like fully about to break at this point. She is like, I can't do this. I really cannot do this. But Rissa comes up and asks him if he'd like her to dance for him. And Arin's like, oh my, thank God. She thinks that Rissa probably did this to make her jealous, but she does not care because she just saved her from having a full-scale breakdown. And she's like so incredibly grateful for the distraction. So she just sits on her knees next to, like, kneeling on the floor next to King Folk while he talks to Midas and presumably other men. Folk mentions while they're yapping, they're gossiping like little hens, that a few strands of Arin's hair must be worth a month's wages for a peasant. And Midas says nothing, and Arin is just like gutted because she feels like she has no value aside from the fact that she is gold. Everything is gold. And there, in the corner of a 10-year-long foundation of reliance and trust, a break appears. Like a shallow, jagged chip knocked into glass, a tiny fissure like spider silk spreads up an inch. Folk decides that at this point, it's time to drop out of the party for disgusting and obvious reasons. But Arin still has like a teeny tiny sliver of hope that Midas will stop this. Like he's got a plan and that he is going to stop this before, like, you know, she gets R-worded. Because, you know, this is Folk to Midas. I'm eager to have her to myself. King Midas tips his head at Folk, though his brown eyes flick to me. Enjoy. That's all he says, like I'm a wine or pastry set out for King Folk to enjoy. I turn my head away from him, too hurt to look at him anymore. That spider crack spreads another inch higher. And everyone's like shouting nasty stuff at Arin. They're walking away, and she just stops walking, and she says, no. And she's like, she tearfully asks Midas, like, isn't she worth more than this? Aren't I worth more than this? I ask quietly. Not to Folk, but to Midas. Not about the gild of my skin, but the love of my heart. Isn't that worth more? Worth? King Midas seethes as he stops in front of me. His tone is quiet, but the closest onlookers can still hear, and everyone is pressing closer, straining to hear what he says. You are worth more than all the gold in this castle, but I still own you, and I will spend you any way I see fit. I've never heard a heart shatter, but it sounds like a crack spreading up glass. Midas is like apologizing to Folk because Folk's like, you have really bad trained saddles. You know, like how you train saddles, people. They're people, not dogs. Midas is like, so sorry, my liege. He would actually never say because he's a raging narcissist. Midas tells the guards to escort Arin to Folk's rooms, and this is where Arin starts freaking the fuck out. Like, she is kicking, she is punching, she is like screeching. She is not going without a fight. Is fair. She's subdued by guards, and they start to walk away. They make it to another room. Okay, so they're not in the ballroom anymore. But she did kind of embarrass Midas in front of the revelers, as it were. When a man walks in with a message for Folk, man is not pictured because we'll see. So he walks in with a message for Folk. So saved by the bell at the 11th hour, another reprieve, presumably. Like I said, they're in a room away from the party at this point. This dude is a 5th Kingdom soldier with a message. He came from 4th Kingdom's border, and he doesn't particularly say what the message is. He's kind of like hemming and hawing, and Folk snaps at him. Get the fuck on with it. But really quick, this is kind of like, this is the border, so, wait. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, well, this is what was in the book, so he's come from, like, here to here, so I don't know how long that would take, like, on horseback or whatever. Let's, like, get on with it. Somber resolve settles in the man's face, though he grips the hilt of his sword. As soon as your army breached Forth's border, King Ravenger's men attacked. Your entire fleet was decimated, sire. Sire. King Folk's brows pulled together. You are mistaken. Our troops broke through Forth's line earlier this morning. We took Cliffhelm. Our joined armies with sixes were victorious. Forth was caught completely off guard. Our negotiations are already in place. The messenger darts a look around the room, eyes landing on a stoic, expressionless Midas before returning to Folk. No, your majesty. No? Folk repeats, as if he's never heard the word before. What do you mean, no? We didn't take Cliffhelm. Ravenger's training outpost there was full of soldiers. We never even breached the walls before they were on us. One of Folk's guards curses, Folk's fist tightening at his sides. You're saying my entire division was taken out? The messenger hesitates. Yes, your majesty, and... Folk's like, let's get the fuck... And what? Something is wrong here. Very, very wrong. They were celebrating. Their plan was victorious. My brows pull together in a frown as my mind whirls. What happened between then and now? How could such misinformation be passed to the kings earlier? Or is the soldier lying? But if so, for what purpose? The messenger grips the hilt of his sword tighter under the scowl of his king, and I'm not the only one who notices. What are you doing, soldier? King Folksguard asks, tone heavy with suspicion as he reaches for his own blade. But the messenger isn't looking at him. He's not even looking at Folk. He's looking at Midas. My body coils with tension, my instincts blaring at me that something terrible is about to happen, but I have no idea what. Explain to me how we were told that we took Cliffhelm this morning, only for you to now inform me that my men were all slaughtered. Folk snarls. Tell me how Ravenger's men were able to overtake both my soldiers and Midas's without us knowing. Folk's guards close in on the messenger, like a pack of wolves sniffing at a traitor, a liar, but they're closing in on the wrong man. The messenger tilts his chin up, a proud stance widening his feet, even as resignation flashes in his eyes. They didn't overtake King Midas's men, because Midas's army never met ours. Six's army never went to Forth's border. Your soldiers were there to face King Ravenger's men alone, and the earlier messages were a deceit. Accusatory eyes cut over to my king. Midas betrayed you. Folk is, really confused, and he's like, that's my best friend. So you must be mistaken. And Midas is like, no, he's right, I betrayed you. Crazy. Let this be your last life lesson, Folk, Midas replies calmly, not the least bit threatened despite the deadly menace hanging in the air. True kings don't give out their armies for cunts. I don't know who looks more shocked, Folk or myself. The monarch of Fifth Kingdom stares hard at Midas, like he's truly seeing him for the first time. Like he's no longer being blinded by all the gleaming gold, the immeasurable wealth. You were never going to take Fourth Kingdom, he says, a flat understanding braced in his tone. Midas laughs. He actually laughs at the other king. Of course not. Everyone knows you don't attack Fourth Kingdom. King Ravenger decimates anyone who dares. So, no time to process this. A fight breaks out. And Arn gets knocked to the floor in the scuffle, and it is too much for her. She's covering her ears, and she's having some trauma flashbacks. Fighting is too close and too loud, and I'm sprawled on the ground just like I was on a different day during a different fight. A fight under a yellow moon, its shaped like a fingernail scratching at a dark sky. 10 years ago, when raiders came to the tiny town where I was living. Raiders doing what they do, taking everything that didn't belong to them. Money, livestock, grain, women. My mind wavers from then to now, from there to here, as I start to scramble backward, aiming for the wall. She's trying to get away when a literal body falls on top of her, just a beheaded body. And once again, no time to process that because she's being yanked up and held at knife point by Folk. He's pressing into her neck, drawing blood, and Midas is just sitting there, gaping like a fish, shocked, and he's doing nothing because he's a flop. And Arn's like, great, okay, well, I'm gonna die, so that's good. She's just resigned. Digby, absolute icon, comes out of nowhere and K-words King Folk. Yeah. Arn's like, oh my god, I'm not dead. And she runs to Digby and she hugs him and she buries her face in his chest and she says, thank you. And she says, Digby, you killed a king for me. It is so sweet. They have a very sweet, family, familial relationship. Midas tells him to take Arn to her rooms and he does. And he carries her there, which is also very sweet. But he has to go. So he goes to her rooms and he leaves. And Arn's kind of just alone with her thoughts and, kind of left to reel over the near-death experience all by herself. So that's good. That's always what you want to do. I personally love being alone with my thoughts. I love thinking and pondering and wondering. So a while later, His Highness makes an appearance, and Arn hears him come in, but she's in shock. She's just like sitting there. He wants to help her get cleaned up because of course he does, because I hate him. And he's like, hand, and she doesn't take his hand, and he's like, just let me help you. And she realizes that he's said that before, and we get a flashback to Arin's time on the streets. So she is 15 at this point, and one night looters arrived to sack the village she's staying in. This is the thing that she was having trauma flashbacks about earlier. I wandered alone, stayed hidden. It was the only way a girl like me could stay safe. To make sure I didn't end up right back in the same situation I'd escaped from. Bad men, the world was run by bad men. And as much as I tried to lay low, to be invisible, I couldn't. I knew better than to stay too long in one place. I knew better, but I was tired. I slipped up, got sloppy. I knew it was just a matter of time before something bad happened to repay me for it. The looters came that night. With fire and axes, they took the village I was hiding in, the one I should have left behind days before. They took everything and anything they wanted. The farmers who lived there didn't stand a chance, didn't have any defensive training. I tried to run. Too late. I was far too late. Pulled from an alleyway, I was shoved into a cart with other women who'd been dragged from their beds. They screamed and cried, but I was silent, resigned. I knew it was over for me. I knew there's no way I'd escape, not again. So I steeled my spine, and I readied myself to face the life I tried to run from. And that's when he came, Midas. Like the goddesses themselves had sent him, riding in on a dappled gray horse with a half dozen other men. At some point, the sounds of the fighting stopped. The fires tossed on thatched roofs were put out, the clinging smoke in the air the only thing warming my thin, bedraggled body. And then a lone figure appeared in the alleyway. She escapes into an alleyway. I cowered against stacked crates until he stopped in front of me, and I looked up at his handsome face. He smiled at me. Not a jeer, not a cruel tilt of lips, a genuine smile. It was warm. Just looking at it stopped my ceaseless shaking. He held out a hand while that smile stayed on his face. You're safe now. Let me help you. And I was, and he did. From that moment on, he kept me safe. When I wanted to hide from the world, he gave me his cloak and hood. When I shied away from other people, he made sure we stayed separate. When I clung to him, he held me. And when I kissed him for the first time, he kissed me right back. You're safe now. Let me help you. I was done being exposed and vulnerable in the world, so he made sure I didn't have to be anymore. This reminder of their past and what he has, like, quote-unquote done for her causes Arn to decide that, like, he's earned her loyalty and trust. So despite the fact that she is still genuinely upset and traumatized, and he's the one who put her in the situation, she allows him to help clean her up. So he gently gets her into the bathtub and he apologizes. I'm sorry. His words are gentle but steady, same as the swipes against my throat. For what part? I asked, my voice croaky from disuse or emotion. Maybe both. The cloth is dipped again and again, new warm water to wash away the dried blood, to clean the cut. You weren't supposed to get hurt. My brows rise at his admission, even as indignant anger rises up, shouldering past the numbness I felt for the last few hours. The slice against my throat is the least of them. I reply, and I mean it. You'll notice that's a terrible apology and not really an apology. He's clearly not sorry. So he attempts to explain to her that he was never going to let Folk touch her. Silly, silly girl. He knew Folk was a fool who coveted what was his, right? So Arn is, like, still dubious. And she's like, as Midas has set him up for it, which is true, and he did. Remember, he doesn't usually call on her in the mornings, and he brought her out because he wanted to flex on Folk, and this was obviously part of his plan. And as patronizingly as possible, Midas goes, is that what you think? Folk is a flesh trader. Shock courses through me. What? Midas nods solemnly. I heard rumors, but I found out for sure months ago. When I was able to confirm it, I knew something needed to be done. I tried to keep up with his words, tried to make the connections. So you planned how to take him out? How to A-word him? Midas's lips pressed together at my damning tone. Would you rather I let him continue to sell his own people for profit? Midas is like, I'm a king, and kings have to make hard decisions. Like, you're not a king. Like, what would you know about it? Flop. And Arn says, by setting him up, tricking him, by sending his men into a meaningless slaughter. How many of his soldiers died, Midas? As few as possible, just enough to make it work. As if that makes it any better. Better a man die with honor on a battlefield than a child be sold to slavery. Wouldn't you agree, Arn? A punch. That's what it is. His words punch into my stomach, against my heart, up my throat. He shreds me inside with a sentence, memories threatening to come up, to spill out my eyes. I did it for you, Arn, Midas says, quieter now, losing the defensiveness of his voice. To make sure they don't endure what you did. She's not ready to forgive him, but, he's like, come on, forgive me. Like, I love you. So he corners her into it, and then they bang consensually. But she obviously, like, she just wants some comfort. Like I said, she's always touch starved. She's alone all the time. Like, she just wants some comfort. She wants some affection. And the only, like, he's willing to give her that, but in the form of, like, sex, which is, like, not what she needs right now. But I digress. I think that he's taking advantage of her vulnerability from the previously mentioned near-death experience. I move with him, my spine like a wave, as I work to bring him pleasure, to give him what he needs, to make him happy. So afterwards, when they're finished, Arn lays on his chest, and the traitorous tear that falls from my eye tells a different story as it lands on my lip. It brines my happiness and rinses the smile away, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Midas leaves before dawn with a kiss, but his lips don't take the taste away. And there, in the dark, alone, I cry. And that secret sob I let drain into my pillow, isn't really truth. But it's not one I'm ready to face yet. So I let the satin soak it up, and then I fall asleep, the candor hidden beneath my head and shoved away by the time morning dawns. It's been 3 weeks since Arn almost died, and she's preparing to leave the castle. So we find out that Midas has gone to Fifth Kingdom as, like, interim king. I'm not sure on the exact verbiage. But he spun a story where the messenger who actually came to tell Folk that Midas betrayed him was there to assassinate Folk and that he was successful. Midas left a week prior, and he wanted to, like, quote unquote, make sure it was safe before Arn and the other saddles joined him. We're going on a journey. He took a gold-painted woman with him as a decoy, and the queen doesn't even know that the real Arn has been in the castle. She's just been up in her cage for like 3 weeks. Like, just by herself, presumably. Like, sucks, but nevertheless, it is an exciting day because our girl gets to come out of her cage and do just fine. Yeah. 10 years. That's how long it's been since I stepped foot outside. The cold wind drifts over me with a lazy current, whispering across my face like a gentle welcome. The guards share a look, their feet shifting from side to side as I stand there, not moving. But I ignore them, because this moment, this is mine. When I chose to hide away, I was barely more than a girl. Vulnerable, battered, scared, utterly sick of what the world had to offer. So I hid in a cage, and I was content to do so. After the things I endured, I wanted it. I accepted the bars, embraced them, even. Not to keep me in, but to keep others out. But I missed this. The fresh air in my lungs, the smell of the breeze, the cold against my cheeks, the feel of the ground beneath my shoes. I missed it so damn much. Arn's riding in a carriage, she's riding in a carriage by herself, while the other saddles are grouped off in other carriages. Arn is really alienated from the other saddles, like, even now, and we'll see later that this is, like, extremely purposeful. After a bit, Arn manages to convince Digby to allow her to ride a horse for a while. Save a carriage, ride a horse. You know, that's what they say. She hops on the horse, and everyone gasps because she's riding it normally and not side saddle like a lady. The horse's name is Chris. As she's riding, she strikes up a conversation with the guard next to her. Now, this guard, his name is Sale. Okay? They become besties expeditiously. Okay? Arn's first friend. Yes, Baby's first friend. As they continue their journey so they're going from here to here. So here, through the Barrens to here, to Ranhold. But Arn notices that the further they go, the poorer and, like, more dilapidated the villages become. So Arn asks Sale, like, what this place is, and he tells her it's the shanties. And she asks how long it's been this way, and he's like, well, I'm from the other side, but, like, it's not much different, and it never really has been. Like, it's always been like this. And she is confused because she assumed Midas becoming king, having unlimited gold, that the whole of Highbell was, like, a wealthy city now, right? It would make sense. She thinks she's naive for thinking this, but honestly, like, it's a valid assumption to make, you know? Remember, he told Arn when he decided to marry Melina that a reason was that the kingdom was destitute, and, like, the people were suffering. Tee-hee-hee. Doesn't give a fuck. And Arn's, like, genuinely appalled by this, but she sees children peeking out to look at the passing carriages. Just let me say, really quick, that, the carriages are made of gold. Like, everything is gold. Everything that can be gold is gold. This massive show of wealth with these, like, very poor, you know, destitute villages. People who, like, are probably working as hard as they can to, like, just even get a meal, on one meal. And she sees these children, and she stops. She stops the carriage. Stop the count. And she hops out. She grabs a pouch of coins, and she gives the children all of the coins she has. Because she's been there. She lived on the streets before she met Midas. We and it was hinted that she was possibly forced into sex work. So she knows what it's like, and Arn is fundamentally like an extremely kind and generous person. Two things that she's learning her king boyfriend is not. Another crack in Midas's pedestal. People see her giving out coins, and the villagers start like freaking out and rushing the carriages and whatnot, which like fair. And Arn's even that, or I mean, obviously, Arn's like, yeah, I get it. I know better than to flash wealth around in the poor parts of a city, but seeing those kids, it was like looking in a mirror of my past. I wasn't thinking straight. Poverty like this is a wound that King Midas has let fester and infect. It's not their fault, this desperation, this weighed decision of whether or not to attack for the chance at a meal, at a blanket, at medicine. It's survival. And all of us, every single one, would do the same in their position, would battle with that burdensome what if. Nobody ends up attacking and they manage to like get away. So they're on the road again, and Arn sees something foul just ahead and like, what is it? Oh, just presents from King Lot. What are they? Just rotted corpses from the attack. Okay. And Digby tells Arn to like, please stay in the carriage next time. Like, don't get out to give people coins. Like, I know you're a really nice person, but like, we're all gonna be dead if you get hurt or killed or maimed. So it was risky and rash, but it showed you care, that you saw, that you looked. Nobody else would have ever stopped for them, he tells me, and the tone of his voice tells me everything I need to know about who he is and where he's come from. Sadness fills my cheeks, holding them up into a makeshift smile. You would have, Sale. I tell him, you would have stopped too. And even though I just met him, I know this down to my bones, because this soldier from the slums, he's not so different from me. Me and you, we're not so different, you and I. Sale dips his head, and I offer him a smile before I climb into the carriage, the door closing quietly behind me. At least I know that for every King Rot that exists, there's someone like Sale in the world to balance it out. Narn's thinking like she doesn't know what to expect once they reach Fifth Kingdom, but for now, she's okay. Despite not having the security of my cage, the world isn't crushing me, isn't breaking me. For now, I'm okay. Women are so brave and they can do anything. So the next chapter, it has been 7 days of riding, and Arn's sore as shit from riding this damn horse. Despite the aches and pains, though, like she's so happy to be in the fresh air and to be chatting it up with her bestie, Sale. She realizes that more than the desire to go outside or the desire for freedom or just change in general, this is what she's wanted. More than anything. Just true, pure, platonic friendship. Not strategic alliance for political gain, just being known and understood by another person who doesn't expect you to be anything but the person you are. So Digby comes to inform Arn and Sale that there's a storm rolling in and tells Arn she's got to get into the carriage. She convinces him to let her keep riding, and he's like, fine. Polly in the carriage sticks her head out and says something really rude to Arn, and Arn is like so painfully understanding of why the other saddles don't like her and like treat her the way they do. It still hurts her feelings, but she gets it. So they continue riding, and Digby tells her carriage for real this time. She relents and hops to it, so the storm is really slowing them down, but they continue until Arn's carriage gets stuck, and they're like, all right, let's stop for the night. Set up camp to wait out the storm. A lot of weather-related plots in Act 2. The weather held for 7 days, but now it's broken into a million powerful pieces, sending shards raining down from the sky. Outside, the storm seethes like a warning. I'll realize too late that I should have heeded it. That's what we in the biz call foreshadowing. And stagnant at camp for 3 days and 3 nights, and finally the storm lets up to get them back on the road. Everybody's miserable, and I don't blame them because I would be too. I get headaches when I'm in the car for longer than an hour, so I really understand, and I would be a human nightmare were this me. Digby is up Arn's ass again because he wants her in the carriage where she's safer, and he doesn't want his head gilded on a spike, which is so fair. Arn agrees, and we set off on our merry way. So our girl takes a little nappy poo in the carriage and abruptly wakes when it stops. She can't see anything out of the window, so she peeks out to ask Bestie Sale what's up, and he says, it's like there's some disturbance in the snow, so some scouts were sent to check it out. Arn tries to get out of the carriage, but Sale won't let her because Digby said not to before, Digby wants you to stay in the carriage. I'm sure he does, but I can't bear being stuck in here. That trapped feeling. The second I stepped foot outside of the Highbell Castle, something changed. Like a plug pulled out of its drain, a decade's worth of water. Water that's engulfed me completely began to lower. Gone was the strain of holding my head above it. There was no sucking in breaths, counting them, reminding myself I had air, that the crushing flood wouldn't suffocate me as I treaded water. I can't go back to that. Mentally, emotionally, even physically. The thought makes beaded sweat begin to gather against my skin, and I just know, that I can't bear it. Our girl will not be trapped in a mobile cage, okay? So she shoves right past Sail and hops out. She sets off towards the other carriages where all the other saddles are. And Rissa is leaning her little head out of the carriage, and to everyone's shock and surprise, she asks Oren what's going on without being evil about it. No snide remarks to be found. A win. And she tells Rissa what Sail told Arn. So, and she says, well, like, you know, if you find anything else out, let us know. Let me know. Slay besties. Sail brings up Arn chucking a book at Rissa's head that I mentioned a while ago. She explains the context and that it was not a malicious book throwing. And he tells her that he likes that story and says that he wasn't sure if he wanted the position to help guard her on the way to Fifth Kingdom, that he was previously Wall Watch, which is where you just sit on top of the wall and freeze your balls off, in Sail's words. And he stops himself. He's like, well, I really shouldn't say those words in front of a lady. And she tells him not to worry about it because she's just a saddle after all. And he says, you're definitely more than just that, my lady. And you should make sure people treat you as such. Sail's words startle me. My smile slipping off as the conviction of his words put something serious between us. Something heavier than the lightness we usually keep. So the guards are a gossipy bunch. Clucking hens. Every man. So some people assumed that Arn committed literary assault out of jealousy, but Sail and like a few others figured it was because of Rissa being tired. That's when he knew he made the right choice to be her guard. Because you aren't what some people say. You aren't some stuck-up spoiled snob of the saddle sitting in her tower and sneering down your nose at everyone while you polish your gold skin. I grimace at his visual. No. You cared enough about getting Miss Rissa out of a tight spot, so much that you risked looking like the villain. You did something, a little rough, sure, and probably not the most well-thought-out plan, but you acted. You didn't just stand by. I gave her a bloody nose. I did. I deadpan. Sail just shrugs. You also made it so she got to retire for the rest of the night. I look away. Well, that was my goal. Though, like you said, the execution was a little rough. See, he challenges, as if I just proved a point. You're different, and you don't deserve to have such a rough time of it. This basic kindness is kind of making Arryn, like, really think about how shitty she feels constantly in her cage and how unfulfilling her life is. And now we see why Arryn has no friends. Because once you verbalize some of the shit that she's thinking in her head, you start going, wait a minute. It gets a little bit in her head, and Sail cracks a joke to lighten the mood when it gets too heavy. Digby comes up and he tells these two that there was a disturbance ahead, perhaps an avalanche. And if it's an avalanche, it could for sure reach them where they are because they are downhill. And also, like, there's no way that they could go around because they're on the path, and they have to get past where the avalanche, if there's an avalanche, is. Scouts that they sent out, remember I mentioned that, because of the disturbance. Yeah, they should be back by now, and they are getting a little bit treacherous, right? The vibes are not good. Digby and 3 other guards go to try and find the scouts, and he tells everyone else to wait by the carriages and be ready to move. Before he sets out, Digby tells Sail to guard Arryn. She asks Sail if he thinks that they'll find the scout, and he's like, for sure. He says that Digby is the best guard he's ever met, he's the best soldier, and that he's smart and he's got good instincts. So Arryn watches Digby's lantern fade into the distance, and she thinks about how much she's depended on Digby's just like solid, steady presence in her life since the near-death experience. And Sail attempts to assuage Arryn's worries, and she mentions like feeling bad that he's a soldier and he got stuck just guarding her, but a girl, which is like a boring job for a soldier. And Sail's like, no, I heard that Digby like requested that posting. And someone else asks, they're like, what the fuck is that? Like interrupts them and goes, what's that? A saddle behind us asks, pointing forward. Everyone converges, abandoning the carriages to skirt around the bottom of the hill to look into the valley. Sail and I join them, scanning the landscape, but my eyes catch on to something far away, far and glowing like a beacon. Is that fire? Polly asks. The warm light hovers in the distance, an orange glow that streaks against the black, like a smear on glass. Maybe it's the lantern from the scout, someone offers? No, Sail says, shaking his head. At this distance, that's way too big to be from a lantern. And someone's like, oh no, like, it could be an avalanche. Sail's like, I don't think it's an avalanche. Dread thickens like a pinching fog, gripping the breath from my lungs. Holy, divine, fuck, a guard curses. Snow pirates. End of Act 2. Snow pirates. So my personal theory is that the author wanted to include pirates in the story somehow, but like had already came up with the setting and that it's like a frozen wasteland. So they're just pirates who ride a ship through the snow. Pretty self-explanatory. They roam in the Barrens, which is where we currently are. Barrens are right here between 5th and 6th, so we're right in here. Roam in the Barrens, and they pillage ports, etc. In the distance, there's a very loud yell, like a battle cry from hundreds of voices, so that's not a good omen. Everyone, it's time to panic. So Sail shoves Arn in a carriage, and everyone's like freaked out. Arn's carriage driver is nowhere to be found, so Sail hops in, and he's gonna drive it. Everyone else is getting in carriages and, hopping onto a horse, and booking it. So the guards are like surrounding her carriage, because remember, like, she is the 2E's precious cargo, and she's to be protected at all times. Each time she looks out the window, though, it seems like more and more guards are disappearing, like from the surrounding perimeter, like, of protection is just like getting thinner and thinner. And Arn's like the battle cries are getting closer and closer, no matter how fast they're going. And Arn thinks that it's like they knew that they were coming, like they were waiting. So the wheel of the carriage hits something, and Arn gets some airtime in the carriage, and her ribbons keep her from falling as she comes back down. The carriage takes a sharp turn and goes airborne. A shriek skids off my tongue as we hit the ground hard, and then we start to roll. The pull of the ground disappears for a split second, a pause in the fall where no gravity exists, where my entire body is weightless, floating, hanging by invisible threads. And then that gentle hover, that pillowed air. It abandons me with a violent turn. The carriage flips end over end, and this time not even my ribbons can brace for impact. I'm tumbling, I'm tossed, I'm rolling like a ball of snow down a slick hill, gathering weight, picking up speed, no hope of stopping softly, no chance of control. Just the grim realization that I'm in this fall's clutches. Like a rag doll, I'm flung, blows landing to every part of my body. For a moment, I worry that the flipping will never stop, that I'll be trapped in the fall, forever spinning in the dark, no hope of an end. Arn blacks out from the impact. That is like a concussion for sure. She awakens to her ribbons, caressing her gently. I cannot express in words how much the ribbons disturb me. And the carriage is on its side, and Arn's still in it. So she pokes her little head out the door. It's on its side, so she pokes her head up. And she sees a man climbing up the side. And she attempts to shut the door and hide. But he sees her and he yanks her right out. The first thing I notice is that he's dressed head to toe in white fur, blending in with the landscape around us, except for the blood-red cloth around his face, the notorious band of the Red Raids. What do we have here? I'm not going to do an accent, sorry. What do we have here? His voice is muffled but rough, like his voice box froze a long time ago in this frigid world. A throat iced over, words that dig out like shards of ice. Get the fuck away from her. My head snaps to the left, and I see Sail being hauled forward at knife point by 3 more pirates. Gone is his gold-plated armor and his cloak. He's even been stripped of his uniform, leaving him in just his thin tunic and trousers. His face is swollen and bruised, a crack of blood clotted against his brow, either from the carriage wreck or a struggle against the Red Raids. And Sail apologizes to Arn, and she says, "It's not your fault, Sail," I say quietly, trying to ignore the way the pirate to my right grips my arm so tightly that it cuts off my circulation. My body wants to shake in terror, but I staunch the urge like a pressed hand against a flowing wound, suppressing it, holding it in. Yes, it is. Sail's voice wobbles, and my heart cracks with the sound of that trembled concession. Cracks deeper with the way his throat bobs, as if he's trying to swallow down his panic, trying to push through despite our circumstances. And all I can think of are the stories he's told me as we rode side by side these long nights, of his 4 older brothers who ran barefoot and wild in the slums of Highville, of his tough but fierce-loving mother, who swept them out of the house with the end of her broom in a scowl, but would walk all night long searching for them when one didn't come back in time for supper. He doesn't deserve this. He made it from the shanties to the barracks, to a personal guard of the king's favored, all without a coin in his pocket. He's the kindest person I've ever met, and he doesn't deserve to be shoved up a hill by a pirate with no name. The pirates drag Arn and Sail uphill, and Arn sees that the Barrens has been just overrun by pirates and 3 ships. So enough pirates on 3 ships. I don't know how big they are, but they're pretty big. So also there's something called fire claws. They are like felines with sharp fangs and fire around their paws, and that's what pulls the pirate ships, I think. Like sled dogs. The carriages have been sacked, the guards have been slain and lay littered on the ground, and the saddles have been corralled to be taken onto the ships. Sale and Oren get separated, and she's placed with the other saddles. I'll be okay, he promises, but even in my state of shock, I can hear the lie tremble from his lips. Sale, his name is a cry, panic expanding, bursting all at once. Sale, I scream again, struggling against the man who holds me. Nothing. My struggles do nothing. Even if it did, even if I managed to break away from him, there are hundreds more to grab hold of me. It's okay, Sale calls, voice tight, face agonized. It's okay, it's okay. His repeated reply sounds like a plea. I'm wrenched away, Sale torn from my line of vision as I'm shoved toward the 12 other saddles. Trigger warning for physical assault here. Sale is beaten and brutalized by the aforementioned pirates, while Aron stands with the saddles. At the sound of a whimper, I look to my left and realize it's Polly trembling beside me, with tears running down her freckled face. She's crying so hard that she's having trouble breathing, her dress ripped in several places, the top bodice in pieces, and though her shaking hands try to hold the scraps together, it's too ruined, her breasts nearly bare. Anger rises in me. Anger and despair. I quickly remove my coat and place it over her shoulders to help cover her. She flinches when I touch her and tries to smack my hand away, but when she sees that it's me, the fight seeps out of her. What are you doing? She asks, the usual mocking bite from her tone absent. I ignore her question and instead grab her arm and shove it through the arm of my coat before helping her arm through the other side. When her arms are in, I do up the buttons, though my hands are shaking so hard that it takes me several tries just to get the top one done. When she's covered, she looks over at me, a harsh line slashed against her cheek, clearly marking where she's been slapped. Thanks, she mumbles. And the guards have been stripped for their armor. Remember, everything from Sixth Kingdom is gold. Like, genuinely, how stupid can you be? And Sale is, like, half stripped, and he's trembling, kneeling on the ground from the cold, and Aron makes eye contact with him, like, having him in her field of vision is a small comfort. There's a loud noise, and a man starts descending from the ship. Who's this? It is the pirate captain. His name is Captain Thane. He's a crusty man. We don't like him. The Crust and his crustlings, the other not pictured pirates, they discuss the saddles as if they literally aren't there. The prospect of not being assaulted or harmed is really not looking good. He walks through, inspecting and groping saddles until he reaches Aron. He yells for someone to get him a light so he can see her better, and upon further illumination, he's in disbelief, and he licks Aron to make sure she's not painted. A slow, daunting smile spreads across his face, a face laid bare for me to see, with the mouth revealing a few missing teeth that have been replaced with the same white wood as the ship. Short, dark blonde facial hair growing on only his chin. Blonde man. The ends gathered in red beads, a thick piercing through his left ear, a plug of red-stained wood filling the hole. I don't dare wonder if it's been soaked in blood. My mouth goes dry at that smile, at that look he gives me. It's the kind of look that tells a woman all she needs to know about what kind of man has hold of her. If I had breath in my lungs, I would scream, but I'm dried up, emptied out. The only thing inside of my chest is that steaming guilt and a cold clutch of terror. Without warning, the captain snatches my wrist and tugs me forward. I stumble at the unexpected move, but he spins around on his heel, raising my hand high above my head like a show of victory, like a prize to show off. Reds, look at the treasure we unburied. His voice booms across the barrens like a drum. We've got Midas's gilded whore. The pirates are jazzed, and Aron tells Fane that Midas will pay handsomely for her safe return. And he's like, duh, but he's planning on keeping her for himself until he can sell her to the highest bidder. He tries to grope her, and she's very disgusted with him, and he grabs her really hard, and she makes a noise, and Fane remarks that she's loud, and he likes that disgusting man. Voice yells not to fucking touch her, and Fane asks who the fuck dared to say that. Who was it? It was Sale. Fane walks over, and he's like, say it to my face. And Aron is like silently begging Sale not to say anything, but of course he is honorable and noble, and Aron's his best friend. And he is enraged, so he repeats himself, and he reiterates that Midas will pay more than anyone else for her, like anyone else could, because of the gold. And that, like, he's the only one with the means. Fane says some, like, truly disgusting things about what he plans on doing to Aron, and he slaps some snow on Sale's head to be a dick. She's going to be nothing but a gold, cum-filled husk by the time I'm done with her. Sale flinches, shaking now so hard, and even his teeth can't stop their violent chatter. My heart pounds and hammers, like it wants to burrow down, to tunnel itself down into a chasm hiding far below. Another pile of snow is collected in the captain's palm, constant, methodical. But you won't care about any of that, and do you know why? He asks, dumping another heap over my guard, my friend. Sale's head bows, as if the weight of it, this chilled humiliation, is growing too heavy. Slowly, as if that's all he was waiting for, this forced capitulation, the captain gets to his feet. He dusts the rest of the snow off his hands. My heart continues to hammer. beating against my ribs, begging. You won't care, Captain Fane goes on, looking down at him, because you'll be dead. A battering ram against my chest, a single moment only long enough to blink, to look. Sale's eyes are suddenly on mine again, blue depths of an ocean he's never seen, and that kind gaze of his keeps speaking, his nod keeps promising. It's okay, but it's not okay. Not at all, because before that nod is even finished, the captain has unhooked a knife from the scabbard at his waist and rammed it into Sale's chest, straight through to his heart. No, I'm running before I've made the conscious decision to do so, but I don't even make it 3 steps before someone grabs me. A pair of meaty arms closing around my middle. I scream, a horrible rage tearing out of my throat, my voice an unearthly noise that runs through the air, hollowing out the night, thrashing through the mountain pass, cursing at the covered stars. My scream makes the nervous horses whinny and the fireclaws hiss. It muffles the gale widow's cries, and it blames the fates. Even when a hand slams over my mouth to quiet me, the sound rips out, as if I could make a tear in this world, as if I could shatter the skies. The hand falls away from me as I fall on the ground, scrabbling for him on hands and knees. I don't feel the bite of the ice as I crawl, but his name falls from my lips again and again, as time seems to stop, to inhale with a shocked breath. His blue eyes are still on me, but blinking. They flick down to the blade, to the red. I reach him just as his body curls forward, just as he falls. Even with my hands landing against his shoulder, Sale still goes down. All I'm able to do is twist him up to keep his face pointed at the sky. Mouth dribbles red life, breath like choked water, blue-tinged lips to match his eyes as they rain. My heart shatters itself against my ribs. He looks at me, my teardrops landing on his. I sob. He shudders. It's okay, I cry, lying for him as he did for me. And with his last breath, he nods. Imagine you get your first friend and they die. So Arn's been in shock, and they're all the saddles are ushered onto the ship, and she feels so much guilt because she feels at fault for Sale's death. Like, he was her guard, he caught Fane's attention by defending her. Also, remember, he was Arn's first real friend ever, and when she sees pirates assaulting Sale's body and, like kicking it, like physically assaulting it, not like, she loses it. She starts kicking and thrashing and screaming, and one of the pirates, whose name doesn't matter, stuffs a rag in her mouth and pushes her. She falls onto the deck of the ship, and Rissa, of all people, offers a hand to help her up. As she is getting her bearings, she accidentally elbows someone, and it's Mist, who is shown on the board behind me. Mist is a bitch, and more on that later. She tells Arn to watch it, and Arn's used to everyone treating her like shit, especially the other saddles, but she is not having it today. Her ribbons unfurled to shove Mist to the ground. A point for the ribbons. Rissa tells them not to squabble, like they're all fucked and they're all in the same situation, which, like, slay Rissa. Mommy. Mist says that it's Arn's fault that they're there in the first place, which is not true, but more on that next book. Mist is pissed because the guards place more emphasis on protecting Arn because she's the king's favored, and I would venture to say, like, this is a Midas problem, but speak your truth, babe. My earlier guilt may have felt like steam, but now it's like an open wound, torn right through my gut. All the other saddles continue to look at me as Mist's words settle in, but I only stand there, silent, mouth dry and wound aching. What is there to say? In her eyes, in all of their eyes, she's right, maybe from no fault of my own, but an ugly truth all the same. How would I have felt hearing that order, protect the king's favored, if I were them? They kind of talk amongst themselves, and she's, like, isolated from them. Like, it's like another instance of Arn being, like, one of the most empathetic characters I've ever encountered. The saddles huddle together, and Arn's once again excluded, and, like, all she wants is Sail. So she looks over the side of the ship to see where, it's like, to see his body one more time before they, like, go away, and it's not there. Like, it should have been there, but it isn't. So upon further investigation, Arn sees that his body has been strung up on the ship like a sail. Like, these men are so foul. So gross. Pirates leave the saddles alone for a while and set off. And, like, the more Arn is standing there and thinking, the less sad and guilty she is, and the more pissed. Like, the more enraged she becomes. You get more repugnant ribbon content. So Arn decides to get Sail down. That's what. All 24 of my ribbons move like tentacles all down my spinal cord, growing in perfect symmetry out of my skin. The inch-wide satin strips rise up on either side of my spine, from the bottom of my neck to the dimples above my butt. Their long lengths are like snakes ready to strike, not at the captain, but to Sail, the ropes that bind him to the pole. I stand at the base of the wooden post looking up, directing, moving each ribbon with determined intent. Even as they get sodden and heavy with rain, they deftly tug out knots. When that's not enough, their edges harden, no longer soft like satin, but sharp as the edge of a blade. Golden silk battles against corded twine, ripping and yanking, slicing into the strands like they're nothing. I ignore the shout that snags the attention of the pirates, ignore them as they finally see me, see what I'm doing. My ribbons keep shredding, keep tugging. When the first pirate gets to me and snags my arm, a ribbon is already there to intercept him. It lashes out, slices into his arm, cutting through his thick furs like they're as thin as a petal. A muffled yelp of surprise escapes him as he stumbles back and lets go of me to put a hand over his wound, but I pay him no mind. My eyes are still up, my attention ensnared on Sail's body. My ribbons work viciously, directed with barely a thought, fueled by anger as red as a fireclaw's flames, despite the fact that they're soaked through and heavy. One after another, the bindings fall away from Sail's body until someone grabs me from behind and spins me around. I come face to face with Captain Fane, his brown eyes searing, his face uncovered. What the fuck do you think you're doing? He snarls. Like, she is putting her ribbons to work. She's using all of her might to disentangle Sail's body from where it's tied up, and everyone is confused. Remember, I don't know if I mentioned this, but she, doesn't. Midas doesn't like for her to use her ribbons because it's weird, I guess. And so she doesn't use them. Like, people just think that they're, part of her clothing. She's full of rage and suddenly revealing to everyone that she's all of a sudden got tentacles made of satin. Captain Fane, tries to stop her, but she untangles the last of the knots, and Sail's body comes crashing down on top of both of them. And Arn is not done. She uses every ounce of strength that she possesses in her body to drag him and heave his body overboard. And Fane and the other pirates think that she was attempting to jump with him, slide in the sewer. She wasn't. She just didn't want his body to be disrespected like that. She tells him that, and he says, all right, guess I'll disrespect yours. Okay. And he, grabs her by the ribbons, and he binds her ribbons, around her body and, ties them in knots so, she can't get them. Fane, he's holding her by the ribbons to, lead her around like a leash. So Fane's, holding her by the ribbons, and one of the crew members tells him that they've got a messenger hawk. And he's, holding it up to read it, and Arn's looking over. She can't tell what it says. The pirates mention that someone is coming, and Arn's like, well, can't be good for me. I'm fucked anyway, you slice it, so. And he tells the pirates to get all of the saddles to the kitchens and put them to work, because there's guests coming for dinner. Guess who's coming for dinner? And despite the fact that whoever's coming is not going to be good, Arn is grateful for the reprieve and, not being in Fane's clutches, because he was fully about to, yeah. I make myself a promise right here and now. If I somehow make it through this, if the red raids don't ruin me completely, I won't allow myself to be stagnant anymore. I won't allow myself to be so weak and inept. I should have known better. After my childhood, after all the things I've been through, I should have known better than to become so complacent or languid. If I could go back, I'd shake myself. I became like coin, that solid gold bird forever resting on his roost. I clipped my own wings. I stayed listless on my perch, so if I make it through this, if I live, I vow to myself that I won't let it happen again. I won't sit idly by and keep letting men crush me in their fists. So everybody is, working on helping the cook make food. Cook is very mean. Everyone on this goddamn pirate ship is just so mean. And Mist continues being a cunt to Arin, even though they're all in the same situation. But everyone is watching the gangplank, and something is coming. Arin is using this opportunity where no one's paying attention to her to continue to try to untie her ribbons, because she still has use of her arms. So she's, reaching behind her, trying to untie those ribbons. And everyone continues waiting for something. And what are we waiting for, baby? I keep trying to get unbound, but I'm struggling to make even a single loop loose enough that I can pull it properly. My heart pounds in time with their steps. I need to get free. I need to get these knots out. I need... A dozen soldiers appear on the ramp, marching straight onto the ship, 2 by 2. Right. I don't know where I was. I'm really, really sorry if that is not where it was a minute ago, but I'm almost done, and I'm tired and I want to eat. A dozen soldiers appear on the ramp, marching straight into the ship, 2 by 2. They stop in front of Captain Fane in a formidable formation that flares out like a pyramid. It's an imposing sight. Black armor, as dark and flat as burnt coals, brown leather pants and straps that crisscross over their chests. Onyx sheaths are belted around their waists, their sword hilts made of gnarled deadwood tree bark, contorted wickedly. Heads covered in helmets, postures threatening, my mouth goes dry at the sight of them. Because there, carved at the center of their midnight chest plates, between the leather straps, is their kingdom's sigil, that twisted, misshapen tree with thorned roots, stripped of all leaves, four crooked branches reaching out like the devil's claws. These are Fourth Kingdom soldiers, King Rot's soldiers. And they're an awful long way from their borders. My hands go still in my ribbons, my eyes go wide. King Ravenger's army is the most feared in all 6 kingdoms. I've heard plenty of stories telling of their viciousness on the battlefield. I find myself wanting to inch backward, as if I can try to fade into the shadows, though my feet are frozen where I stand. No one speaks, no one moves. Even with the 12 soldiers standing there, Captain Fane waits, though I don't know why. My brows pull together in a questioning frown until I hear it, a single pair of footsteps. A 13th man stomps up the ramp, passing his soldiers who stand at attention on either side of him like brick walls. He's tall, his very presence demanding of attention, yet despite the fact that he's wearing the same black armor and brown leather as the others, he has a very distinct difference. Are those spikes? I hear the hissed whisper from my saddle to my right. I hear the murmurings of curse and evil. I hear them explain how King Ravenger created him from the rotted waste, turning his body into something unnatural for one purpose, to command his army. But they're wrong. The commander with spikes jutting from his spine and arms isn't cursed. The male who stops at the front of the group, so tall that Captain Fane has to tip his head up to look, isn't some result of King Ravenger's powers perverting his body. No. The man standing there, whose body basks in menace, is one thing and one thing only. They. When I read this for the first time, I was just agog. Because I did not read the bit where it tells you that there's Fae in this book. I was like, oh my god. So we get an Aurea info dump in chapter 32. It's like kind of clumsy the way that it's like horseshoed in, or like, what is it? Shoehorned in. The way that it's shoehorned in here, because it's literally just like, I don't feel like putting this exposition. You're just going to get a whole chapter of it really quick. Basically, there used to be 7 kingdoms. Remember, there are 6 now. My map. And 1,000 years ago, the 7th kingdom was at the edge of the world. They sort of mentioned that the world might be flat, and I don't know if that's just like for the purposes of the myth making, or if the world that we're in is actually flat, and that's interesting. Way out at the end, so far that even the sun and moon only skimmed its horizon, so distant that the flat earth ended in a precipice with nothing below. 7th kingdom lived in perpetual gray, no light, no dark, no beyond. But it was here where the bridge was found, Lemuria, the bridge that led to nowhere. It was said that if you were to step off the bridge, you would fall forever, and not even the divine gods and goddesses could find you to give you the reprieve of death. But 7th Kingdom's monarchs were scholars. They didn't believe in myths or unknowns, so they sent soldiers and explorers onto the bridge of Lemuria to find out what was beyond, to discover where the bridge led. For years, hundreds of Orions journeyed on the bridge, only to never be seen again. Most believed it was a fruitless endeavor, one the monarchs should give up. A suicide mission, a task soon given to thieves and debtors instead, a venture that never led to anything. Until one day, a woman walked back across. She wasn't a soldier, or an explorer, or a scholar, or a thief. She wasn't sent by the monarchs. She was a stowaway, an orphan girl whose father had gone over the bridge and never returned. At age 10, she slipped past the guards who stood at the start of the bridge and ran silently, determinedly, into that void to search for her father. No one ever knew, no one ever saw. She walked through time and space, battling madness and starvation and thirst. Where all others finally caved and tossed themselves off the bridge, giving in, she pressed on. Where every other Orion man had failed, she succeeded. Go boss. Sayura Turley did the one thing that no others had. She walked the bridge of Lemuria and came back to tell the tale, but she didn't return alone, because the bridge, that narrow road in the nothing, led to a new world, a world of magic. She might not have found her father, but Sayura did find Anwin, the territory in the realm beyond, the realm of Fae. Sarah fell through their ground and landed on their sky. Bird, they called her. Broken-winged bird. She found a new family in the magical paradise made alive there, but her heart was always in Aurea, the place where her mother was buried, where she had fond memories of her father. When she turned 19, Sarah fell in love with a Fae male, the Prince of Lydia. It was said that their love was deeper than all the seas of Anwin, that music was made from the song of their hearts. And before they married, the prince gave her a wedding gift. He couldn't bring back her father for her, but he could bring back her home. So the prince took her to the bridge of Lemuria once more, at the end of their glittering sky, and he bound it. Through space and time, he found the thread that connected their realms through this voided bridge. With his great powers, he yanked it closer to Anwin, to the Fae Kingdom, so that Sayura could return home to Aurea whenever she wished. Oria and Anwin became sister realms. It was a celebration for all 7 kingdoms when Fae and Oriens united. After that great joining, Lemuria was no longer that voided, endless path of death, but a true bridge between the realms, one that only took minutes to cross. And for hundreds of years we coexisted, mingled. It's where Orien magic still comes from, mixing with the Fae. But year by year, that magic dies out a little bit more because no more Fae come here, and no more Oriens cross into Anwin. They haven't for 300 years. I think I might be missing something, guys, because that doesn't make any sense. Because the Fae betrayed Oria. A new monarch rose long after Sire Turley and her prince drew their last breaths. A king who spoke against cohabitating with Oriens, against mixing with lesser beings. He snapped the thread that Sarah's husband had tied with love, severing the bridge and cleaving the realms in one mighty swipe. Seventh Kingdom, vulnerable, there at the edge of the world, was swallowed whole from the force of the magical cut. The land and people were never seen again, and the bridge of Lemuria fell into that void, crumbled into nothing. So Oria has the Fae to thank for the magic that still exists here, but it's a bitter gift that's laced with betrayal, because there is no Seventh Kingdom anymore. There is no peaceful alliance. There is no bridge to Anwin. There are no more Fae, or so people think. It's at this point that Oren's internal monologue tells us that this hottie is named Rip. He's Commander Rip for his propensity to rip people's heads off. Rip the heads off of his enemies at battles. So that's sexy. He's a modern legend, but Arn didn't expect him to be like as truly frightening as he is, because like there's a lot of rumor about him. But he's not just like another Orien with watered down Fae ancestry. He's a lot more Fae than that. So Rip talks to Captain Fane. I'm losing my voice. Rip talks to Captain Fane, who reveals to him that they received a tip on where Midas's fleet would be. Keep that in mind. Back and forth, Rip tells Fane that he'll be buying Midas's traveling party, and when questioned, Fane is like, for what? And he's like, that's none of your fucking business. It's between Midas and Ravager. Like, they have beef, that's their beef. But Fane agrees to negotiate, and he says it's mealtime, so. The commander finally looks away from the captain. His head turns, and I swear, I feel his eyes land right on me. My breath gets stuck against that gaze, like a fly to sap. I'm trapped, unable to move, unable to escape. My pulse skips ahead. But then he just continues his visual sweep, head turning, those hidden eyes passing over the group of saddles with bored consideration. But Fane agrees to negotiate over food and, like, says, let's go eat. It's mealtime. So Arn sees Rip and Fane, like, still arguing back and forth while they're eating, until they come to an agreement. They come to an agreement, and Rip's like, I'll take my purchases now. And Captain's like, sure, you'll find Midas's men and his horses at the other 2 ships. And he tries to get rid of him. He's like, see you later, enjoy the rest of your night. And Rip's like, wait a minute. The amount agreed upon is for all of Midas's people, the commander announces. The captain blinks, brows pulling together in a frown. He's confused for a split second, but I know. I know at a moment before the commander's helmet-clad head turns in my direction, cutting through the people standing in front of me, as if he were aware I was standing here all along. A gauntlet raises, a finger pointing at me. My heart freezes in the center of my chest. That includes her. And he's like, no, we did not agree on that. And he's like, you should probably get better at negotiating, because we kind of did. No, Midas's favored will be coming with us as well. My chest goes tight, stuck, like the weight of that coin-filled trunk just slammed down on top of me. My drumbeat heart rhythm is back in full force, reverberating in my ears. Captain Fane's fist clench at his sides, eyes blazing, and if I refuse, a callous, cruel chuckle comes from the commander. It's the kind of sound you hear before being tortured by a madman, the kind of laugh from a cold-blooded villain. You won't like what happens if you refuse, but by all means, the choice is yours. A tick appears in the captain's jaw as he takes in the soldiers standing at attention, their stoic postures unwavering. Even though the pirates outnumber them, I have a feeling it doesn't matter. How did you know about her? I didn't mention her in any of the messages I sent. You had your tip, I had mine. I have no idea what that dubious answer means, but my palms begin to sweat. Fucking dumbass pirate man has been outwitted because he's not that smart. Really quick, hey guys, remember when I said that there was a sexual assault scene? That's what this is, so if you need to skip ahead, I will try to put a timestamp on screen. Or at least a time to skip to on the screen. So while the 4th Kingdom soldiers are loading everything up, Fane grabs Arn and Rissa, and he's like, he says he'll be damned if Rip takes them before he gets to enjoy them. He takes them to his chambers, and they're standing there. Rissa and Arn are standing there, performance, Rissa murmurs beside me, so low that I almost don't hear her. A reminder to play a part, to slip into an act, to keep my real self separate from the horrors and closed off inside me where he can't reach. Perform. Just perform so we can get through this. Her low murmur of encouragement is enough to make me stop shaking, to take a full breath. I'm grateful for it, for the way it grounds me and reminds me that I'm not alone, even though I wish she'd been spared of this. Captain, your cabin has quite a mass of belongings, Rissa says, bringing out her easy, sultry voice. It's her attempt to lessen the tension, to set the tone of this encounter. Everything she does, from her voice to her movements, is calculated, purposeful. I don't have time for the song and dance, and Rissa is a sex worker. She has been for a long time. She knows the drill, and she tries to be amenable to whatever Fane wants to sell the performance, but he does not want that. He is a nasty man, and he wants to actually hurt her. He does not want her to even pretend like she's enjoying it. So it gets a little violent here, and Arn really can't stand it. She's remember, she's just still standing here. She can't leave. The door's locked. And she tells Fane that he's hurting Rissa and to stop it. The backdrop of windows behind him shows that the sky is lighter. The black cloak of night is finally peeling away, revealing the approach of a growing dawn. Captain Fane is a dark figure before it, his silhouette shrouded by the impending morning. As he rounds the bed and stalks closer, my feet want to retreat, but I hold my ground. I tip up my chin. He disrespected Sale's body, and now he's disrespecting Rissa's. Rissa, who's willing to do anything to make it through. Rissa, who would have performed and taken everything he threw at her like a professional because that's how strong she is. But as I've come to find, I have my limits. So he slaps her in the face, falls onto the floor, and then he goes to whack Rissa with a belt. My hands fist and my jaw locks. I know it the second the sun officially crests the horizon, because with it, so does my resolve. My skin prickles. I move forward, the murky morning filling the room with a dimmed haze. But even with such weak daylight, I feel better. Like I always said, I'm a bright side kind of girl. The moment I step into the stream of muted dawn, the prickling on my skin intensifies, warming me up. My shoes scrape against the wooden floor as I limp toward the bed. Marissa sees her, what are you doing? And Fane, can't wait your turn. I'm just he starts to approach me with an excited gleam in his eye. I'm going to enjoy making you hurt. His fist comes up, ready to hit, or grab my hair, or make me kneel, or toss me down. I don't know for sure what he means to do as that hand comes for me so fast, but it doesn't matter, because I'm faster. Without hesitating, without thinking, I rush, not away from him, but closer. I cut the gap between us like a knife plunging forward, and then I slap my bare palm against the skin at his neck. That's all it takes. He goes still as my hand squeezes tighter around his neck. Behind me, I hear Rissa gasp, because there at the spot beneath my palm, change starts to spread across his skin. Like a ripple, it extends from his neck where I'm touching. It billows out like smooth water, cresting over his shoulders, pouring down his arms, spreading over his torso, dripping down his legs. I feel it seep beneath, sinking past his skin, puddling into his organs, flooding through his veins. The space is the last to go, because I want him to watch, I want him to see, I want him to look at me and know that my eyes are his punishing promise. The last thing Captain Fane is able to do is widen his gaze in shock. But he doesn't have time to blink or breathe. Not again. Not ever. 1 second, his skin is ready, his tunic stained, his cock purple, his eyes brown, and the next he's frozen in time, every inch of him, from the beads on his beard to the toes of his boots, all of it gleaming, resplendent, vindictive, because I just turned the motherfucker solid gold. I was fucking, when I read that for the first time, I genuinely, I think I was reading it in the bathtub. I feel like I have a vivid memory of reading it in the bathtub, and I was like, Rissa's goofed and gagged, understandably. She's like, what the fuck did you do? How did you do that? And Arn's like, how did you do that, Arn? She walks over, unbothered by her nudity as she circles around the captain, her trembling hand reaching toward his chest. She makes a fist and knocks on it before snatching it back. Great divine, he really is solid gold, she breathes. Her uneasy eyes lift to me. And he's dead? Oh yes, I assure her. Very, very dead. So, short-lived sigh of relief, because they hear a noise and they notice that the floor is starting to warp beneath the weight of, the solid gold man statue. And they will certainly be caught if he crashes through the floor onto everyone below them. So Arn and Rissa try their damnedest to shove his statued form out the window. They use a sheet as a pulley, and Arn has her ribbons putting in work, and they don't move that shit an inch. Arn, nearly gives up, but her ribbons get a second wind, and they manage to tip the statue just enough for it to tip out the window. And they throw the trunk of gold out the window as well as motive. Captain, they're coming back. One of the pirates' voice hollers through the door. Rissa's eyes go wide in worry as she mouths, "What do we do?" Now, Arn's kind of having her mastermind moment. The henchman is knocking on the door. He's like, "You gotta stop being a sex offender before the fourth soldiers catch ya." And obviously, he's a metal statue in a snowy wasteland, but they don't know that. Arn's like, "Can you fake cry?" to Rissa. Rissa's like, "Of course I can fake cry. Come on, be serious." And she's like, "Okay, follow my lead." So they kind of like muss themselves up, and she uses her ribbons to make it look like they're bound, even though her ribbons are very tired. We learn here that Arn is not great at lying. She gives the pirate the alibi that Fane jumped ship literally and took the trunk of gold with him. And there are holes in this story, such as his coat and hat sitting out in plain view in front of God and everybody. The pirates are not that smart, though, so it does end up working. Quarter, who is the henchman, decides to get the girls to the fourth soldiers, so there's not a pirate mutiny, because if they find out that the captain has dipped, they're going to be, someone's walking the plank, I guess. The girls are almost home free, but the door, and out of the door, Fane's fuck pad. But Quarter sees the aforementioned coat and hat, and he's adding 1 + 1, and he's getting 3. He's like, "Wait a minute, just wait a minute." Now he's questioning Arn and Rissa, and remember, I said Arn, she's a bad liar. She's very bad. Bad liar with a savior complex. Arn's stuttering all over the place, and he's like getting in her space, and he's intimidating her, and she's starting to panic, and she is weakened, okay? She's used like every single bit of her energy playing Craft Supply Octopus, like with those damn ribbons, and heaving and hoeing and whatnot. She's about to collapse. She is literally about to pass out, and Quarter is saying some fuck-ass shit. Then, before Quarter can finish his sentence or go through with his threat, a cold, smooth voice cuts through the air like a boom, a volcano erupting in the middle of a silent twilight. "What do you think you're doing?" And Rip is like, "It's Rip, by the way." And he's like, move away now." And I'll be real here, the way that Arn is talking about Rip, being like, and he's really protective, and it works for me. It is working for me. I get it. He's rizzing Arn up with his commanding aura, his aura. And Quarter tries to backtalk, bad move, and Arn and Rissa are like, oh fuck, like this is the guy who is rumored to have his nickname because he rips people's heads off so frequently, and they're like, he's about to rip someone's head off in front of us, and like, we've had a rough day, okay? And they don't need any more trauma. But Rip starts laughing. The sound pours out of his helmet and pools in the air between us, making the pirates go tense. It's the sound of a warning. It's the laugh of a madman, one set on the promise of blood. A threatening aura as thick as tar pulses off him, making my skin bead for the unnatural chill. The spikes on the commander's arms gleam black like a chasm's throat, ready to swallow Quarter whole, and I nearly feel sick with fear. This is the monster that King Ravager unleashes on Aurea. This is the male terror that the legends and gossip and tales are derived from. No wonder no one wants to meet him on a battlefield. Quarter's like, "Oh, fine, take him." Like, he's full on, like, Jared Leto Joker laughing, and everybody's just like, Rip tells our girls to giddy up, and they walk out into the great unknown. And if you recall, Arn is teetering on the edge of consciousness. Remember, Craft Supply Octopus. So she's like, she's dead on her feet. And as they're walking down the ramp off of the ship, she falls off of it. They're close to the ground, but she does fall off of it. Her arms and her ribbons shoot out to catch her fall, and she honestly, for a second, she's like, I think I'm just gonna lay here. She's like, if I just lay here, would you lie with me and just forget the world? She hears a whip cracking, and the ships start going away. So at this point, Arn notices when the ships move that the white landscape is dotted with hundreds, maybe even thousands of Fourth Kingdom soldiers. Arn thinks it becomes blatantly clear why the pirates didn't dare fight with Fourth. So, and Arn is in her misery era, thinking she's away from the Red Raids, but now she's going to be a prisoner to her king's enemy. Enemy number one. She fell in King Ravager's hand like a shiny bargaining chip. And Arn is about to throw up. Do you remember she's still sitting on the ground when a pair of black boots appear in her line of sight. I'm vulnerable here at his feet with the commander's eyes locked on my weak ribbons that are still trying to help hold me up. His unwanted attention makes my heart gallop. With a mental push, I'm somehow able to collect the shattered pieces of my strength and force myself to my feet. As soon as I stand, my loose ribbons hang limp and dull behind me in the snow. no strength left to even wrap themselves around me. The commander's head cocks in an animalistic way as he regards me with a slow drag of his eyes from bottom to top, making the sheen of the barely there scales over his cheekbones ripple in the gray dawn. When his gaze finally lifts to my face, my wary gold eyes get caught by his intense black ones. The pirate ships pull further away, the army continues to move, but the commander and I continue to stand there, watching each other. From this close, I can see the flakes of snow getting caught on his thick black lashes. I can see the polished gleam of the spikes over his brow. I wouldn't call him handsome, he's far too wicked looking for that. But the savage grace of him is as magnificent as it is utterly alarming. Even though I'm freezing, my palms begin to sweat inside my gloves. My pulse pounding so hard I expect it to knock pinprick holes through my veins. The wind picks up, ruffling the brown feathers along my stolen coat, making it look as if my whole body is trembling. Strong. His presence is so damn strong and full of death. Like even his aura knows how destructive he is. Finally, he speaks again. So, this is King Midas's pet. He glances down at the feathers on my sleeves, the gold ribbons bereft in the snow, and his black eyes flash with interest as they lift again to my face. I have to admit, I didn't expect to find a goldfinch. I'm not sure why hearing him call me a pet bothers me, but I find my hands fisting the fabric of my skirts. She's staring at the sand. She's telling us how hot and sexy he is. Like, if you read a lot of romance, you can tell based on the way that people are described that they're gonna be fucking and or sucking. It's at this point that Arn pulls homophobic dog, and she's like, I know what you are. I'm like, okay. A slow smirk spreads over his mouth, a menacing curl of his lips that makes my heart stumble. He takes a single step forward, a simple move that somehow sucks all the air out of the world. He leans in, his aura pushing me, testing, feeling, overwhelming. And despite the frigid air of the barrens, despite the deafening noises of the scraping ships and the marching army, his voice presses hot and resonant against my ear as he speaks. Bunny, I was about to say the same thing to you. We're almost done, my babies. So the final chapter is from Midas's POV. I've been to every single kingdom in Aurea. First Kingdom is a tepid jungle, flooded with pretentious fools who fancy themselves masters of the arts. Second is an arid expanse of sand and not much more. The monarch's a dull, puritanical lot. Third Kingdom holds more interest, their coast speckled with private islands only to be visited upon an invitation of the monarchs. Their only blight is that they share a murky border of swampland with Fourth, but King Rot's Kingdom holds no interest to me at all. Fifth Kingdom, however, I've grown increasingly fond of. He's like looking out the window and he's like, can't wait for this shit to be gold. I've been given the south suites of Randhold Castle to stay in, the interior all decorated in whites and purples with grey rock and black iron fortifying its structure. It's lavish and entirely respectable enough for a visiting monarch, except I don't intend to simply visit. I sit down at the desk in the corner of the room, fresh blue winter blossoms set cheerfully on top, its stem resting in frosted water. I'm deep in a stack of papers when the knock sounds on my door, and my advisor Odo shuffles in. Your Majesty, a letter has arrived from you. I hold out my hand, my attention split on the roster in front of me as he places the rolled parchment in my palm. Breaking the wax seal, I unroll the message, my eyes distractedly skimming over the words, but then I stop, go back, start over. I read it once, and my body goes rigid. I read it a second time, and my jaw clenches tight. By the third time, I'm seeing red. Sire? My eyes snap to Odo, where he waits in front of the desk, no doubt wondering if I need to send a reply. There will be no reply. My hand crumples the paper. They have her. My voice is dark and low, words formed between barely separated teeth. The realization pounding in tandem with my enraged pulse. Odo hesitates. Who has who, Your Majesty? In a blink, I'm on my feet. My arms sweep everything off the desk in a terrific crash. Books slam against the floor, papers go flying. The frosted face of the flower shatters against the wall. My advisor flinches back, wide eyes on me as I pace back and forth across the room. My fists are clenched so tightly at my sides that it's a wonder I don't snap the bones in my fingers. No one dares move or question me further as I continue to pace, probably in fear that I'll solidify their heads and leave their golden skulls on a frozen spike outside the gates. I don't feel it when I stop and slam my fist into the wall. Yeah. So he's your friend's Republican boyfriend who also punches walls. I don't care when my knuckles split and blood stains the white carpet in furious blots of red. I don't feel it, and I don't care, because the thing that matters the most to me in this world has been taken from me. My favored, my gilded, my precious. She's been stolen from me and is being held in an enemy's clutches. I turn to my guards, and my anger rising like boiling water, sending a thick haze of fury over my vision. The precision of my planned annihilation against King Folk will be nothing compared to those who dare take Arin from me. She's mine, and I'll destroy everyone in my path to get her back. I really hope I can edit this in a timely manner. In conclusion, I will say, and we will see this in the next book and after that, that the author does a really good job, I think, of changing the voice of different POV characters, which, like I said, you'll see, it'll become apparent. I think that while it is still mostly from Arin's point of view, I think that you can definitely tell, make the voices of each first person narrator sound different. Honestly, it's a pretty tight book, and it has very little filler. I know that I had divided it into 3 acts, like I mentioned, and I know that Act 2 was really small, but I felt like the journey itself is kind of self-contained, so it was a nice little, breaky for me. And the most that I skipped, for, annotations was a few pages at a time. There was very little that I did not include in, my recap or, filler for, the big stuff. So, will say I do think that the first and second books in the series should have been combined for reasons that I'll explain in the next video. But I really hope that you enjoyed my blood, sweat, and tears, and I genuinely enjoyed the series. I think it's a little bit. Here we go. Well, at least it lasted the rest of the time. Whatever. If anyone but my 2 friends watches this video, let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, and if you enjoy this format, please subscribe to my channel, because I am going to do this with the rest of this series. I have some other ideas. I am going to turn off this big fucking ring light, and I'm gonna start editing this, and I'm gonna eat some popcorn and a Pop-Tart and drink some water. Have a good day. Thank you for watching this.